I look at this year's team, Brian, and I think that this year's team is, and again, last year's team I thought overachieved during the regular season. It was a very good team, obviously, but it didn't quite have I think some of the alphas that maybe this year's team did. I think that this team is a little bit more positioned come March to be able to make a deep run, just because you've got some more pieces. You've got some players that have been there, and there's a little bit of a toughness factor that I think was as a real nice addition as opposed to maybe last year. I'm not saying last year's team wasn't tough, but there's a little bit more of an oomph to this team.
Yeah, you could say that, Mike. Let's trade last year for this year. Okay.
Right.
So let's trade Kirk Kriisa for Kylan Boswell. All right. So same, basically their scoring's almost identical. Kriisa more assists, Kylan a lot fewer turnovers.
Right.
So there you go. Let's see. Let's trade Courtney Love for Ramsey. Ramsey for Love. Okay, you've got twice as many points now. I think that was a definite upgrade right there.
Right.
Tabellis for Keyshawn Johnson. All right, now you don't have the offense, but I'll go back to the factor you just mentioned there, toughness, better defender in Keyshawn Johnson. So I would say, an upgrade there. Of course, you've got Pella Larson, Umar Babalow. They're back from a year ago. Let's see. Ced Henderson for, who do we trade? KJ Lewis.
KJ Lewis.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right. So you've got a younger guy in KJ, but a more athletic guy in KJ. I think, his future is exceptionally bright. And, he played an outstanding game at Arizona State. A lot of the things that KJ does not show up in the box score.
Right.
And that's the thing that is of his value. And then let's see, Adama Ball for Jaden Bradley. Well, I don't think there's any question there. We've already covered that.
Right.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the comparison, and it's a different team. Every team's different year in and year out. But these guys, I think maybe have the right pieces in the right places. But a lot of it, Mike, let's be totally honest. A lot of it goes back to matchups. When you get into the NCAA tournament, last year, bad matchup for Arizona and Princeton. Okay. Let's see, what was their loss before that? Houston, bad matchup. Okay.
TCU was a tough matchup before that even. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you go back and, there's been teams that they probably should have beaten that they didn't, but then they've beaten some teams that maybe you say, wow, how did they get that done? So that's why they call it madness, because you get into March, you get into that NCAA tournament. And I mean, you've got to be hitting on all cylinders, and you better hope that the matchup is in your favor.
And what I like too, and we saw it against Washington, when Keyshawn Johnson comes out and plays like that with that kind of electricity, where he's blocking shots, where he's rebounding, it changes the equation entirely, Brian, because he's somebody that really there isn't somebody else like him on the roster, especially when he's playing like that.
Well, and I think the fact that he's listed at 6'7", but he's got a tremendous wingspan, and that's why he's such a good defender, is that he can guard guys taller than him. I talked to him the day of the ASU game here on Wednesday, and I asked him about that. And he didn't go into too much depth, but I think he knows that that's what makes him special, his ability to guard pretty much anybody. And he's been asked sometimes to guard almost anybody on the court. And this week's going to be a good example. He's going to end up maybe against some 7-footers when Oregon comes to town, but he's willing to do that, and I think he's got the skill set to do it. And so, like I said, if you follow my formula there of trading Tabellis for Johnson, you've got a much better defender in Keyshawn, and he's got that energy. Tabellis, and love the kid. And he was kind of cerebral the way he played. I mean, he was didn't change his expression a lot.
Right.
But Keyshawn, when he's got that energy going, you can feel it on the court.
Are we giving Umar Babalow maybe not quite enough credit? Because it's funny, like every single game, Brian, it seems 17-13, 14-12. I mean, the double-doubles that he gets are big-time double-doubles. It's not like they're these 10-10 or, 11-10 type things. I mean, in Arizona basketball history, there haven't been a lot of guys that you can essentially pencil in and it's going to be 16-13 every single game.
Well, it's extremely difficult. I asked Tommy about that last week, and he said, college basketball, it's tough to average a double-double. It really is. And are there only 4, I believe, now in at least major college basketball right now, maybe Power 5 schools, only 4 guys that are averaging a double-double right now. That tells you a lot about where Umar is. And a lot of things, if not everything, goes through him. And if he plays that, so you go back to what you just mentioned. So if Keshad has that energy and Umar's, doing what he's doing, and, Kylan gets to double figures in scoring, we know what Caleb Love can do. We can know what Pella Larson can do. And if that bench plays as well as it has been through most of this season, then, Arizona's a really tough out. And, I'm excited to see what happens here in the next month.